Hello and welcome to DSR Daily. I'm David Rothkopf. I'm joined by Riley Fessler. Rainy day here in Washington, D.C. Riley, how are your spirits?
Hi, I love the rain.
Love the. Oh, that's weird. And Minna Stein, how are you doing today, Minna?
My spirits are less high because I was out walking in the rain, which is never as fun as enjoying it from the inside, but otherwise good.
Well, well, if you're sort of doing it, no umbrella, singing in the rain style, swinging around a lamppost, right? That could be
I
fun.
do that every morning.
Yeah. Um, bum ba-dum bum bum ba-dum ba-dum. Never mind. Sorry. Just got carried away there. We don't do musical comedy here. Why don't you start us off, Minna, with the big story of the day?
Yes. House Republicans are working urgently to pass a sweeping package dubbed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, shaped by President Trump and centered on extending 2017 tax cuts while adding new breaks and boosting defense and immigration spending. The Congressional Budget Office warns the plan would increase the federal deficit by over $3.8 trillion over a decade, while also reducing Medicaid and SNAP benefits and imposing stricter work requirements. The bill has sparked intense intra party negotiations as conservatives demand deeper cuts and moderates voice concern over impacts on constituents. Despite Trump's pressure for party unity, GOP leaders face ongoing resistance and uncertainty about securing enough votes.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, they're no conservatives. There's nobody conservative. If they were conservative and they cared about fiscal responsibility, they would not be promoting these tax cuts, which are what's going to add the $4 trillion to the national debt over the course of the next 10 years. You can't make up for that with cutting social programs. 90% of the federal budget is social, programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and so forth, and defense. They're actually going to increase the amount they're spending on defense. So what they're going to do is hurt average Americans um, to benefit the top 1% of Americans. And, they're going to spin it a lot of different ways. They'll say, well, we're getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid. Well, that's not what they're doing. There isn't that much waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid. Medicaid has been audited year in and year out. It's just what they're doing is they're kicking 17 million people off of Medicaid rolls. They're not getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse in SNAP, which used to be called food stamps, programs that feed the hungry. What they're going to do is they're going to make people starve. And so, not only do I think this bill is political suicide for the Republicans, but sadly, I think it's a kind of suicide murder pact where Americans are actually, no exaggeration, gonna die because they don't get health care or because of cutbacks at HHS, cutbacks to cancer research, uh, end to programs that provide vaccines, end to programs that take care of, the elderly or that take, provide food for people. It's a travesty. This is clearly, and I'm not the first to say this, but this is not only not a big, beautiful bill, it's not just a big, ugly bill. It's the ugliest big bill that the Congress has passed in the 21st century, for sure. And, tune in for the lies, call them out. Don't let them pull the wool over your eyes. This is a travesty. It saves nothing. It costs an immense amount. And frankly, it could easily have been fiscally responsible if they just said, you know what, we're on anybody over making $10 million a year or more, we're going to lay the taxes on them. The biggest companies, they're going to pay their fair share. If they did that, you could move towards a balanced budget. And if you wanted to cut some waste, fraud, and abuse, go right ahead. That's not what's happening. Riley.
A federal judge, Brian Murphy, ordered the Trump administration to keep a group of migrants bound for South Sudan in U.S. custody, warning that their deportation may have violated a court order protecting them from removal without due process. The judge criticized the Department of Homeland Security for potentially bypassing his injunction, which requires migrants to have a chance to raise fears of torture or persecution before being sent to third countries. This case highlights ongoing tensions between the judiciary and the Trump administration over fast-track deportations, especially involving vulnerable migrants from countries like Venezuela and Myanmar.
Ongoing tensions. First of all, it seems like the Trump administration is ignoring the courts. And this is going to lead to, a blow up. And I think even with the Supreme Court. Secondly, the tensions are between the Trump administration and the law. What they're doing is they are denying due process to these people. Also, when you take people from, say, Myanmar, Vietnam, and you send them to South Sudan, a war-torn country they have nothing to do with, that's not deporting them. That's kidnapping them. This is a massive kidnapping operation that violates international law. And, this is what every single court that is addressing it has said. This conflict will continue. It's all reminiscent to me of the first months of the last Trump administration, when mastermind Stephen Miller put forth this idea of a Muslim ban. It was ultimately denied in the courts. The courts said you need to have certain criteria. They worked it through the system for several years, and it ended up impacting fewer, not more people who are coming into the country. But what does it have in common with that? Racism. That's what it has in common. That's what it's about. They'll do anything to advance what is fundamentally, and I know it sounds harsh, but the problem is you don't hear it on the mainstream media, but it's a white supremacist agenda, and they're abusing the power of the executive to advance it.
The FDA is changing how it evaluates updated COVID-19 vaccines, now requiring stronger evidence, like placebo-controlled trials, for approving shots for healthy individuals under 65, while continuing faster immunobridging studies for older adults and those with underlying conditions. This shift aligns U.S. policy with countries like the UK and Canada, but could limit vaccine access for millions of healthy people, prompting criticism from some public health experts. Supporters argue the change restores scientific rigor and public trust, while opponents warn it may worsen health disparities and ignore long-term COVID risks like heart complications and long COVID.
Yeah, we don't know a lot about COVID, even though we've been living with it for the course of the past 5 years. We don't know as much as we should about long COVID or what the additional complications are. It seems kind of reckless to take a vaccine that could keep people from getting COVID and deny it to the vast majority of people. The notion that a healthy adult shouldn't get the vaccine, while consistent with the kind of whacked out brainworm views of RFK Jr., is ridiculous. We give vaccines to healthy people so they don't become sick people. And sure, there are some populations that are higher risk that definitely should get the vaccines, but that doesn't mean that everybody shouldn't. The vaccines are safe. As we saw, hundreds of millions of people got the COVID vaccine during the pandemic, and it was perfectly safe and it was very effective. But to suggest we need more scientific research about these things is a little over the top, particularly given the fast and loose relationship that this HHS has with the idea of science. Stand by, because in September you're going to get a quote scientific study from these folks that says, oh, vaccines cause autism, which they do not. And there are many, many studies that say they do not. And this is going to be thumb on the scale science to advance an ideological agenda that is also a reckless and dangerous agenda. And I think somewhere in our list of stories here, we've got another example of thumb on the scale, which we'll talk about when we get there.
Speaking of, newly revealed emails show that Joe Kent, a top aide to Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, a phrase that still just sends a shiver down my spine.
Sticks in your craw a little bit, yeah.
Pressured intelligence analysts to revise an assessment about Venezuela's ties to a criminal gang to align with President Trump's deportation narrative. Despite his efforts, the final memo still contradicted Trump's claim that Venezuela's government was directing the Tren de Aragua gang to act in the U.S. Intelligence officials raised concerns about politicization, while Kent insisted he was clarifying facts, not exerting political pressure. Gabbard later fired senior intelligence officials involved, accusing them of bias, further intensifying controversy over the episode.
Look, as we have said many times, the enemy of the Trump administration is the truth, because it reveals that their agenda is a dangerous agenda, or that their initiatives have already failed, or that what they're doing is criminal or corrupt. This, like all autocracies, authoritarian regimes, leads them to want to twist wherever they can the presentation of the narrative about the government that's going to people, and to eliminate from that narrative facts that they find uncomfortable. And we see it everywhere. We see it in the effort to censor universities. We see it in the effort to censor science. And we see it right here in the desire to alter intelligence findings to tie with political objectives. There is a struggle behind the scenes about this, and that's why I think we've seen leaks about this story, because the people within the system who want to tell the truth know that the political powers, like Tulsi Gabbard, are doctoring their findings in order to support Trump, because he's an authoritarian leader. That's the way he is running things. Now, I do want to be clear here, because we do try to, provide, an accurate view. This happens all the time with the intelligence community. We saw it happen with Cheney. I saw it happen in the Clinton administration. There were cases where intelligence findings were inconsistent with the goals of an administration, where the administration tried to Bigfoot it. That doesn't make it right. In fact, it's clearly wrong. But it does happen a lot. This is not the first instance of this.
During a Senate hearing, Homeland Security Director Kristi Noem incorrectly described habeas corpus as a presidential power to deport individuals, prompting a media correction from Senator Maggie Hassan. In reality, habeas corpus is a constitutional protection against unlawful detention, and only Congress, not the president, can suspend it, and only in cases of rebellion or invasion. Legal experts criticize Noem's misstatement as part of a troubling pattern among federal officials misunderstanding or misrepresenting core constitutional rights.
Yeah, it's kind of a horse race. As I was just saying a minute ago, misrepresentation is a big part of it. But a bunch of these people are pretty dumb. And so they could be misunderstanding it or misrepresenting it, or conceivably, they could be both. Clearly, Kristi Noem is dumb as a box of rocks. Perhaps her middle name is Garden Noem, like she's. No? Okay, I'm not going to.
No, it didn't work.
No, sorry. Okay. Yeah,
It was a good try, though.
Yeah, thanks. It's like a plaster. looked up like a little black, and she's like, all right, never mind. The point is, she's a dope. And so we won't know whether she's misrepresenting or just wrong, because when I heard her say it, it sounded like she believed that's what it was. Like somebody had told her that and she believed it. But remember, she's completely unqualified for the job she has, just as many of these people are. So what did you expect? Every time these people go up on the Hill, even with Republicans lobbing softballs at them, they cover themselves with shame. RFK Jr. again yesterday, same thing. So should be no surprise. But it just makes it another Wednesday here in the Trump era of the United States, that 10-year period that historians will write about, or 12 years. Let's say 12 years, 10, where Trump was sort of dominant over our policies, or the big political fish in the U.S. system. It's great to live through that. It's not something I ever aspired to, but we'll try to cover it as it is until somebody comes here and shuts us down. That means, on this podcast, but also on our others a little later today, you'll have the Deep State Radio podcast, which we have been doing since before the advent of Trump. Tomorrow, we've got Words Matter. We've got Scylla Consciousness. We've got a deep dive podcast for you tomorrow that I'll tell you more about tomorrow, but following up on the president's trip to the Middle East. And that's one of our need to know deep dives. And all of this is for you. So if you like what we're getting, go to the dsrnetwork.com, click on membership support what we're doing, because that's what makes us able to do it. Until then, stay dry, those of you in Washington, and stay hopeful, those of you everywhere. Thank you, Riley. Thank you, Minna. Bye-bye.